Okay, we'll call this meeting to order, please. Let the minutes show that our roll call is Doak is not here. Everybody else is here. We have a couple of, we have three, well, Chairman, he's always welcome, as is Gary. We need an approval of the finance agenda this morning and get approval, please. Virginia, second here by Mr. Mayor and Miss Mayor and Mr. Mayor.
I got that all down.
Yeah, okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. We have the finance committee minutes. Has everybody had a chance to review those minutes? Motion by Tom, seconded by Virginia. Any comments? Not hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carried. Public comment, we've got two talkers in the back of the room and we have a supervisor. You got anything to say? All right, you bet. All right, Paul, you're up.
I'm up. Okay, monthly finance report would be February. February is usually not much to report. And again, this year, there's no red flags. It's awfully early in the year, so that's not a surprise. Our sales tax collected in and received in March for February was 103,708. Year to date, 245. That payment is down from the 2 or 3 beforehand, but that's expected. But it is up from that same payment in previous years. No contingency requests or anything so far this year. And since we're in April now and there's nothing to report to February, now is a good time to actually review where we left off or where we ended up in 2021. Again, still subject to audit, but we do have, we did send out by department report of where they ended up. There's a few highlights worth noting in there. And then I'll get down to fund and eventually to where the fund balances are. But within the departments, you'll notice that it may appear as though the highway, roads and bridges fund went over budget, but that's not the case. It's they budgeted for approximately 300,000 coming from fund balances. They only actually spent 100 and I just lost my number here, 126. So they were under budget for the year. And then if you look at the highway internal service fund, that number is not complete. The auditors are at the highway right now. There are some closing entries or some typical audit entries. I do know that most of the closing entries have no effect on the bottom line. There's about 2 of them that do. One's pretty small. The incidental labor balance, which is about 157, that gets carried forward the previous year. So that one will reduce or will increase the surplus, reducing the expenses. And then there's a number of inventory adjustments that are happening right now, and the result of those are not yet known. But that'll be known within 30 days. Human services is worth noting. We've had another good year from human services. They have a $1.1 million surplus. And it's worth noting, though, that several items there are one-time or near one-time items. WIMCR payment, which is an annual event, but we don't know how much we'll ever get. We did get 0 one year, so we don't budget for that, and we always wait until we get it to see how much. That was 465,000 of that 1.1 million last year. We also have several years ago there was the OJA levied a fine against human services for not passing an audit with, again, that audit had a very high standard. So if you didn't dot your I's and cross your T's, they said you failed the audit. So there's an agreement reached. Well, they levied 150 some thousand. There was an agreement reached that they'd have a second audit. That they passed the second audit, they would pay a smaller amount. Well, the second audit happened. They did pass it. The second smaller amount of approximately 120, we actually booked it because we expected to pay it within the next year. And within this last year, the OJA came back and said, essentially said, never mind. They signed an agreement and we don't have to pay that. So that reversal of the expense we had a few years ago is in there. And then there's, I don't have the name of it, but I know there's a payment process that's changing where some payments, yeah, some, not that one, no. Some payments come very, very late. Like we don't know the payment until July of this year for last year. Well, obviously that's too late in the year to book it in last year. Brian would take a best guesstimate of that, best conservative guesstimate of that. The process changed now where that money comes earlier. So there's probably a doubling up effect this year. And then in future years going forward, it's going to be back to normal. I don't remember that amount, but again, we're getting down to smaller dollar amounts. And there's a few other smaller ones in there. So yes, great year. I guess I'd say don't read too much into it because some of that may not happen again. And human services being what it is, has the potential to go back and forth. Okay, solid waste fund. I submitted the request for reimbursement from the long-term care early to mid-January, whenever I ran the statements. I have acknowledgement within a week from the DNR saying, yes, we received it and we'll let you know. And as of the end of March, actually, as of today, I haven't heard back from them yet. So I best guess the amount we would get, and my best guess is still our annual expenses that we use to calculate the long-term care fund, which is 63,000. We did spend more than that. I use 63,000. It's my guess, again, conservative estimate. They don't have to pay us the amount we submitted. What they do is they look at how much we spent and then they compare that to the remaining balance in the long-term care fund, and they calculate, do they think the long-term care fund will last the remainder of the 40 years? If it is, they would pay us the amount. If not, then they would pay us some lesser amount. So that one's still unknown. I put in my best guess. Now, if we do get more like we did last year, that just rolls into this year's revenue. And last, as far as the departments go, if you look at the treasurer's office, it would appear that they're $31,000 over budget. But there is one item in there. It's called an unrealized gain or loss. That's on our long-term investments. That's an accounting entry that we have to do, similar to, for those of you on the highway, we have a calculation for the Wisconsin retirement system. We have to book it because that's an accounting reporting requirement. But the others will say every year, don't use that as an evaluation of how the Highway Internal Service Fund did. In this case too, that's an entry we have to book. It's a measurement of the market value of our long-term investments. We have to record it, but we don't really realize that because we buy our long-term investments and we hang on to them until they mature, and then we get the proceeds back. This is a measurement of if we sold it today, how much would we have in a gain or a loss? And that measurement as of December 31st, if we sold it, that would be a good measurement. The treasurer's office has always had a buy and hold strategy. So yes, we need to record it. That's not really a fair evaluation of what that department is or isn't doing. So unless there's other specific department questions, I can move on to some fund related items. We've got 40 funds at the end of 2021. The previous year in 2020, we had 3 of them that still had negative fund balances. We're down to 1, and that 1 is as minor as you can get. Our boat launch fund is about $6,200 negative. We did the dock project, and the Lakes Association agreed to pay us $6,000. That check hasn't gotten here yet, and the other 200 was we had to estimate how much was coming in yet, and we missed it by $200. So very, very small. That fund typically has 8,000 to 10,000 of revenue each year. So once the check gets here, and actually the boat launch sales will cover that this year.
Those boat launch sales, Paul, that's just basically on an honor system, isn't it?
As far as
is people that, they drop money in to launch a boat?
No, they come to the parks office. You can buy a season pass, and then they have a card that goes with them.
Okay.
The daily ones would be, yes, just like you see bicycle passes, whatever else, they'll have the launch tubes there, and there they collect those periodically.
Is there any way, or does anyone monitor that at all? It's just strictly not. I mean, like Kewaunee boat launch, I mean, obviously there's people from the mine where you can see if you got any windshield. We don't have any way of tracking that.
If they happen to be there, they can say something.
Yeah.
I doubt the sheriff's office has the time and manpower to send people to each park, but can they? Yeah, I know they do. If they see that there's none on there, they will go up to them, assuming they're not in the middle of the lake.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Since the end of 2020, we had 5 funds with negative cash. The only significant one was human services, which is about 200,000 negative. This year we have 4. Human services came out of that. The other ones are like the grant funds for the health department. There they spend money first, and it takes 60 days, sometimes 90, to get reimbursed. Again, those will all take care of themselves as well. The amount of negative cash last year, or at the end of 2020, was 293,000. We're down to 85,000. I will point out to the one of the funds with negative cash is the Highway Internal Service Fund. But they have a cycle of every 2 to 3 years they'll crush and make sand and gravel. That's a $700,000-ish project, and they do it every few years because in that volume it makes sense to have them come out here. This year they happen to be. So they spent that, and they have now 700,000 plus of inventory. And then over time, as they use and sell that inventory, the cash builds back up. It's not unusual. I have zero concerns with that because that's how much inventory makes sense to crush. That's what they'll do. If they were a private company, they'd go to the bank for a short-term loan. But since we have the general fund, we don't need to take a loan for that. That's the business cycle where it makes sense to crush in volume rather than have them come back and forth every single year or more frequently. So then we can look at fund balances unaudited, of course, as of the year end. And I'll just look at the biggest ones, the biggest funds. The general fund increased. We set the target at 25 to 35% for the general fund. Typically 15 to 25 for other funds. The general fund right now is at 72%, up from 61%. A big part of that is we don't have the need for cash. The negative cash balances, other funds is usually covered by the general fund. We don't have a need for that anymore because that went down considerably. We had a good year in the general fund. Again, we showed, and we'll discuss this a little bit later, but we had about a 700,000 surplus. We're going to carry over some of those funds. So we can't count that twice. So our general fund is once again increasing. The biggest single item in there is sales tax. The sales tax, we had about 1.4 million. We budgeted, I believe it was 1.15. Human Services Fund, again, another good year. So they went from a negative 6% up to a 12%. Considering what human services is, what they have to do, it's pretty impressive. I'd like to see a few more years of positive results put together before we look at, okay, now what do we do with the fund balance? Roads and bridges went down a little bit, but again, that was planned. They planned on using approximately 300,000 of fund balance. They used slightly less, so the fund balance did go down a little bit. And then the other, the solid waste fund decreased a bit because we spent a little more than what I'm anticipating getting back. Again, I'm using a very conservative estimate. It could be that, it could be higher, but we have $100,000 in there when we close the landfill built in for that specific purpose. And then our health and dental funds, health insurance fund went down. It's a little light on fund balance right now. Dental went up ever so slightly, but that one has a lot more than we really need. So I typically look at those combined. And if you look at those two combined, we have about a 7% fund balance. that one being health and dental insurance should be up quite a bit higher because of the health insurance in particular. The claims process and larger claims can take a little longer to get reimbursed for. All the other funds we have are smaller and either set aside for a specific purpose or little to very little or no impact on the county's finances.
So if I may, Paul?
Sure.
So therefore, from a 30,000 foot or even a 10,000 foot viewpoint, the county's doing very, very well financially. We've been able to turn around some issues in some areas. We've been conservative in our budgeting regarding sales tax. So that puts us in a very strong position. And as Paul had said in previous meetings, this is, I believe, going to help us when we try to make our case that if we go out for any type of issuance of debt, that we can get a more positive debt rating. So again, department heads have done very well in managing their departments, and it shows from the county's financial position. So thank you.
Any other questions for Paul? Hearing none. Scott, do you want to take over with medical and dental?
Sure, that's fine. From the medical loss report currently, for 2 months of claims, we're at 97.64. So we're about 2.5% below what we gain in claims. From the dental loss standpoint, we're about 15% higher than what we are in claims. But again, it's so early in the year, I don't have issues at this present time. And then, as you can see on the large claimants, it is only up to February. We do have one claimant that is above our stop loss, another one that's halfway there. That list will continue to grow as the years go by, as the months go by. But again, nothing that makes me recommend to the committee that any type of action would need to be taken.
Okay. Any questions for Scott regarding dental or health? Okay.
Then if we go to overtime, as you can see, I want to make sure I have this right here. Our year to date is at 30,000. That is close to what we had last year, which was 28. So again, early in the year, when we get closer to the end of the year, we'll see what's going on. We may have more overtime in the sheriff's department due to some vacancies. And usually when there's vacancies, we need to have some overtime to fill those, to cover those hours. I know that highway had a vacancy, but that's gotten filled prior to us doing any type of road construction or winter maintenance. So at least for right now, things are looking good.
Okay. All right. Item number 7.
I am gonna pull that. The wise and sagacious Mr. Kunish will be taking care of these ones.
I figured you'd let him do that. And give us that good news.
Okay, so as I've been mentioning in previous months, 2021 was a little odd in that you order stuff and it wouldn't come in, or you can't get it. And as a result, we have a number of items that were budgeted for in 2021 that for one reason or another didn't happen or are still waiting for. And in order to finish the purchase, what we need to do is carry over those unused funds from 2021 budget into 2022 budget. I believe I'd previously mentioned almost all of these. I don't think the bridge redecking was in there, but all of these items were at least in the early fall to winter. We knew that we weren't gonna fit them into the year. So the voting machines, I don't think we still have them. We have some on loan. So we haven't paid for those yet. We're able to vote using new machines, but that's in process right now. It's been ordered. We've been waiting since, I don't know, probably this time last year. Promo and Rex vehicle was actually ordered last fall. The previous year's models, there was nothing left available that was within price range and within their need. So when the new year came out, they ordered it. The time lag on that is still pretty long. It'll happen sometime this year. They projected 6 to 9 months of waiting for it, and we'll see if that actually happens or not. The dock replacement, we discussed that last fall. That's in the works. The work has started. We put half down on the cement work to install the docks, and they're building them right now. They will be installed either late April or early May was the last projected date. The bridge redeck, that was a pretty small one, and that one has a grant attached to it. So to properly account for it, even though it's only $2,100 of carryover, carry over the grant funding and carry over the county portion of it. And then the soil survey, which is for the 20 acres to the south of us here as part of the jail project. I believe that work is being done, but the work didn't happen until early 2022. So we should we need to carry that over to record that in the year it's actually happening. So that's $114,000. That's the dollar amount that I was referring to, where we had a $730,000 surplus, but we had to take this out of there because if we don't, we'd be counting it twice, and that's the kind of stuff that gets you in trouble. So this is our list of carryovers for this year, and I guess we'd be looking for approval of carried over because it is adjusting the 2022 budget.
Okay, if there's any questions, but if they're, ask them now. Otherwise, we need a motion to carry this over. Virginia, Tom? Okay. Okay, Virginia made the motion to carry them forward to 2022. Do we have a second to that motion? Tom seconds that motion. Any comment? Hearing no comment. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Okay. Number 8.
Okay, several years ago, this committee established a policy saying when we have surplus in the general fund, rather than just leave it sit in the general fund, we would transfer, I believe it was written as a minimum of 10% to the debt service fund for early payment of debt service. So here is the calculation with 738,000 of surplus. We are carrying over 114,000. We don't want to count that twice. So we have 624,000 of surplus for this purpose, and 10% of that rounded up would be 62,500. We're requesting to transfer that to the debt service fund. Debt service fund, as of right now, has about 606,000 in, and that could be used for early payment of debt on or after a call date, or it could be used to reduce a future issuance of debt. Either one applies to the debt service purpose.
Okay, we've got a motion by Jeff, seconded by Tom. I saw him first. All right. Any comments? Hearing no comments. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Number 9.
Okay, another routine request in the policy that comes before this committee is our unused contingency funds from the previous year. In 2021, we had 22,571 unspent of our budgeted $100,000. And in previous years, I had a list of items of possible uses of it. And I don't have that list anymore because they've all gone away, which again speaks to our much improved financial condition. So we had a negative fund balance in human services that was on the list. We had a landfill once upon a time that wasn't doing so well. There was questions for it. We had nothing in I just lost it, capital improvement fund that was brought up to its target last year. So the last item on the list, the only remaining list is let's move it to the debt service fund again for early extinguishment of debt or to reduce the next debt service issue we have. So that's the request this year, is to transfer the remaining 22,571 to the debt service fund.
All right. All right, motion by Virginia, seconded by Tom. Any questions? Hearing no questions. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Again, if I may, Mr. Chair, I'm going to quick
Yes.
interject, and I think these, especially these last two, just demonstrates the fantastic work that Mr. Kunish and department heads have done in the respect that, and again, this committee as well, actually, you should take a victory lap as well in the respect that we have a policy that says that when we have extra money, we just don't put it back into the general fund so that way it can be spent again. Instead, we put a portion of that to debt service to therefore try to lower our debt. And as you can tell with how we're doing things, we're continuing to make strides. And yes, we're in a strong financial position. And I think a lot of that has to do with Mr. Kunish and the policies that were put forth by this committee and Mr. Kunish. So I just wanted, while he's never going to take the victory lap, he deserves one. So thank you.
I will say that the timing of this isn't better because this is the best looking financial statements we've had since I've been here. And if we do have a big debt issue coming up, this is a set of statements that I'm going to want to use for that, because we did get an increase last year. I think we're good for one more rating increase. I'm biased, but I think that's attainable. And I think the elimination of those negative fund balance will go a long way towards that.
Question, Paul, for you is, obviously, we had a very, very, very positive year. How do we compare to other nearby counties? Are we doing as well, not as well? I see other counties that actually they go into debt for roads, which we have stayed away from. And as far as I'm concerned, we can stay away from forever. But how do we compare?
On the subject of borrowing for roads, there was a WGFY survey that went out asking how much do you borrow, what purpose, and how frequently. And I know municipalities borrow more frequently. Their cash flow is different than counties. But there was just under half of counties borrowing for roads, which means they're routinely borrowing. There's the occasional one in there for things like squad cars or bigger trucks. Not a whole lot of those. But the fact that we don't have to borrow for what is a routine expense, granted, you build a road in the last 10, 15, 20 years, but you're building roads every single year. So if you start borrowing for roads, you could be borrowing every year. As far as how other nearby counties are doing, I can't say that overall. I do know that, again, our biggest positive in the general fund was sales tax. The rural counties, so if we look at Door and Kewaunee and yeah, I'm not sure, Manitowoc doesn't have it, so they don't count. The rural counties where they don't have the big urban center actually had good years in sales tax. The urban areas such as the Green Bays, Brown County with Green Bay and other ones actually had a decrease in their sales tax. Now, is that a permanent shift? Is that the way it was the last 2 years because everything was shut down? I would say it's a little bit of each. That's why our sales tax, I think, is going to continue doing well. How well, I'm not sure. Sales tax is hard to predict because that's always been stated. Everybody said that sales tax, the downside is when the economy goes down, your sales tax drop and it drops quickly. And that hasn't happened in the last 2 years, but the last 2 years hasn't been normal. And as far as everything else, I guess how they do it depends on how tight your budget is and, you know, did you shut down? Didn't you shut down? If you budget for every single penny and you come up short, well, you're gonna be hurting. How many programs? What was the impact of COVID on another surrounding municipality? It's hard to compare directly until you see the audit.
Chair.
Yes,
Paul, I know we were talking about, I believe our score, our rating, and that's for bonding.
Yes.
So what is the next step? Like, where are we now versus where are we hoping to be on that? Not only the rating, but then like the percentage?
Percentage wise goes up and down with market. One increase in that rating is usually good for 0.1% or better. We at our last rating were, so S&P rated us as AA minus, which is there's like a 1 through 10 scale. Moody's and S&P have their own lettering system, but S&P, which did us in 2020 last, rated us as AA minus, which is a 4. Number one being AAA is the best. We're 4. I think we're within reach of 3, which would be a AA. The last rating from Moody's, which was also in 2020, that's an annual update, had us at a A1 on their scale, which is a number 5. So we're 1 below with them. I do believe we're in within reach of going up 1 more, possibly 2, but again, I'm biased. The reason we didn't go up 2 last time, which was given to me by the verbally by the rating committee, or I represent the rating committee, was they liked everything, they liked the improvements, but the one they had a discussion about moving us up 1 versus 2. What they decided wasn't quite good enough was that our fund balances compared to everybody else are low. My issue with that is everybody else is at 40 or 50% or so. We have a fund balance policy that says 25 to 35 or 15 to 25. We've decided we don't need to have 40% or more in our fund balances. So I don't really care for that comparing to everybody else. If they need it, fine. We decided we don't. But that was the decision, that because we don't have as much as everybody else, that we went 1 instead of 2. We have a vast improvement again this year. Knowing that was an issue last time, I'll hit that one on the head this time. So we'll have an annual review coming up whenever they decide to do it. Moody's typically has done that in April or May. Last year it was in December. 2 years ago it was in December for some reason. We didn't have a call in 2021. But when that comes up again, or when we have one for a bond issue or refinance, that is going to be on the forefront of what I send them, and making a solid statement that we've gone through the work and determined our general fund is good at 25 to 35%. And even if everybody else has 40 and 50%, we've determined that we don't need that, and we're well within our policy. And hopefully that tips it in the other direction.
So while we're tracking well, if we're expecting to hopefully go up like 1 rate increase, which is only 0.1%, and then watching how the markets are trending with the interest rates, looking at they're going to be going on the rise, at what point do you think it would be wise to refinance for realize some savings, if any of our current bonds, or can't we?
We only have one that's going to be hitting the call date May 1st. We already went through that calculation, and the rates at that time, it didn't make sense. The other 2, it's in the budget book. They don't have call dates for at least 2 and 3 years. So those we couldn't refinance. And by that time, I'm fully expecting the rates to be higher at that point. Those have coupon rates of 2 and 3%. Those are pretty darn good. I seriously doubt we're going to be able to refinance those.
Well, how many years do the squad cars get replaced, and what is the process for budgeting? Is that you put an amount in per year knowing that those are coming due? Or how do you work that?
Squad cars are on a cycle where they replace 3 squad cars every year so that when they get through a 5-year cycle, they have them replaced. We get a quote from Ewald has a contract with the state. So that's by and far the best price for vehicles.
So it's 5 years on those.
Yeah, 5 years.
which is roughly about 125,000 miles. So while it's 5 years, it comes out roughly about 125, 130,000 miles will be the mileage on the vehicle for when we replace them.
And that's not a easy 100,000 miles. They're also idling a lot because they have a lot of equipment in there. And if you don't run the engine, you're going to run your batteries dead. So
So
Any more questions for Paul?
I have a question for Scott, just for curiosity. With these 3 proposed budget amendments, are we going to have one resolution listing the 3 amendments, or are we going to have 3 separate resolutions?
I would actually, because they're each separate items, they would be each separate amendments.
Okay.
Any more questions? All right. We'll move to number 10, approval of supplemental payroll. I believe everybody had a chance to look at it. Sitting over here by Paul. Oh, by the way, here.
Second.
Motion by Jeff, seconded by Tom to approve. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Other such matters as authorized by law. I've got a question for you, Mr. Administrator. And you don't need to give me an answer here, and it's a theoretical question, okay?
Okay.
If, and this goes back to our discussion last month about the ARPA funds. If the county board authorized say $1 million in economic funds under conditions of not currently funded projects, but the project must generate property tax and increase employment, what would you suggest? And you can take, and if you want, think about that and come back and
I can give a general answer, and then at next month's meeting at such matters as authorized, we can talk about that as well. I'm going to go again from the larger standpoint. Kewaunee County has had a strong financial position, and part of that reason why is because of what we've been able to do with our financial management, which is fantastic. But as you are aware, our payments from Dominion will end in about another 4 years. We have we always look at our tax base and where there may be issues that could negatively affect that. And I think from the long-term financial sustainability of our county, we as a county with partners need to take a much more active look and participation in some type of economic development project, whether that's housing, whether that is business expansion, whether that's business location. And so therefore, to do some of that, I think that we as a county really need to take a lead in some of that. And since I have kind of the 2 mayors here, cities are where most of your growth takes place. So I think that there is definitely an opportunity where the county and the cities can work together on identifying projects that could help to build both the tax bases of those cities as well as the county. But to do that, we need to identify what those projects are as well as identify how each of us can partner. Because at least from the city standpoint, there could be the best project whatsoever, but you guys do the zoning of the project. You guys, more than likely, it would need water and sewer. So that is something that the cities take care of. So those types of things, I believe that with $1 million, we need to be looking at that. But again, the county, its ability to do things is severely limited without a partnership of local governments. So I need to be looking at that, but I can give you some other ideas next month, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Regarding the power station and that property, I don't know if we've had anyone from the company, I believe it was just sold and approved. And they've ramped up a pretty aggressive decommissioning schedule. And at least through the media, it's been reported that they want to return that to green space and sell it out as lots for homes. That could obviously turn out to be a pretty significant development in the next, I guess it's hard to say how many years. I don't know.
10 years.
10 years. So I guess just if we can keep that on our radar, and if there's any opportunity to have conversation with the new owners of that property, that's something as well.
Well,
long-term.
if I may, Mayor-elect, that is on my radar. The Energy Solutions is the company that Dominion Energy had selected to do the decommissioning. And instead of it taking 50 years, it is more likely to take 10. Yes, under the current contract with the PSC, the site would have to go to Greenfield. I'm not necessarily convinced that having the entire site go to Greenfield would necessarily be the best option. I believe that there is some redevelopment that could happen on that site. But again, that would have to have some discussions, and especially I would want to have discussions with Energy Solutions as to what their plans are for that 900 plus acres that they would then have ownership. Now, the large majority of that land is farmland. And so I'm not sure if they would be wanting just to auction that off to the local farmers or what they would want to do. But I would definitely want to have a conversation as the county regarding that site and possible redevelopment of it. So yes, that is definitely on my radar, sir.
Okay. Any other questions? Our next meeting is scheduled for May 6th. I'm not sure what the chairman's are. I'm suspecting that our chair is going to be the same with Chairman Olson, but we will see who he decides he's going to put on here. And it is completely up to you, sir.
A committee of one.
Well, my wife will argue about that help part. So May 6th, it will be here, 8 p.m. or 8 a.m. I mean, we'll determine at that time whether it'll be in here or in the conference room. Anything else anyone want to bring up? If not, I would need a motion to adjourn. Okay, motion by Jeff, second by Tom. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried.